Hey guys, this is Coffeeyay for HUSNG.com. Today I'm just continuing part 2 of League Finder. This is with the same long-term student of mine. He's playing at the 60s now, and we're just going to keep finding spots to be aggressive and trying to pin down ranges so that we can justify our aggressive play, so we can find hands to fold out and make sure that we're betting into wide ranges. And at the same time, avoid betting into spots where we don't have enough fold equity. So overall, just going to try to keep finding spots like that. All right, so let's get started. All right, we're back. So now we're playing against a fish, 1 star. Most of the time a fish. Again, it's min raising 7-6, so definitely great there. Yeah, definitely opening 9-8 is 9 suited. Yep. Pretty standard. Obviously at this point we're just praying that villain shoves and instead he folds. Sucks. Yep, folding 8-3, nothing we can do with that hand. Certainly opening ace queen 9. So at this point we're starting to, we should start adjusting our reads a little bit, that he's likely on the tighter side of average. That's one adjustment we can make. Yeah, we're certainly folding that to a 3-bet. It's interesting to know he did 3-bet us. Yeah, I'm shoving here too. A7 suit is pretty close to raising, not all in. But I really like shoving here. And the reason is just that we get so many folds. Like, villains just don't trap at this depth. Barely at all. Like, there just aren't enough hands to trap at this kind of depth. So, when villain limps, I mean, he's going to be folding a huge percent of the time. And taking 1 big blind at this point, I mean, it's going to be good. I mean, getting 1 big blind from start of hands out of position is solid. Throw in the fact that, many fishy villains will call there with bad hands. Queen, Jack, King, Queen. I mean, there's a lot of hands that are worse than us that do call. Not to mention even some hands that are dominated. I mean, if villain is limp trapping and happens to be limp trapping some weak ace hex, he's probably calling it too. So we're happy about that. It's really only the rare situation when villain is limping ace king that, make life hard for this kind of shove. But it's so rare. I mean, I've shoved like this so many times, and I think it's happened once or twice that villain limp trapped ace king, and it just doesn't make sense to put a readless villain's range when he limps as having ace king, because there's no incentive for him to limp ace king. It just doesn't make any sense. And obviously, fish do fishy things and do things that don't make sense. But again, there's just so much value, I think, shoving here that I'm pretty happy shoving that. Even though, once in a blue moon, he'll flip over ace king and you'll feel stupid. And you just have to get over it. And you're happy you're suited. Alright, Yep, opening queen 2, no reason to do anything else. Yeah, cool. So again, we're still kind of holding to this a little bit of a near sided player. He's been playing pretty tight, both in position and opposition so far. It's pretty strange when he flats us on this flop. I think we do have to put mostly draws in his range. It's like draws and 9x. Because I think that, most 8x are raising here. I think most 9x are too, but he's been on the nitty side, he's limped and stuff, so we're not 100% sure he's raising all his 9x. But I think, we just have to put so many draws in villain's range that I would just bet here for value, for thin value. I'd bet like something like 60 to give the flush draw a decent price to call so that it doesn't raise instead. Because the problem if we bet like 80 or something here, villain can sort of just decide to shove over us because, he might say, okay, well, it's a little too big for me to flat, so I'll just shove instead and try to get fold equity. If we give him a really cheap price, like 50 or 60, I think most villains will just elect to flat with their flush draw or straight draw. And that's a good thing. I mean, you know, a lot of people, I sometimes say that, you know, let's bet for thin value here, and people say, well, but wait, we're giving a flush draw the correct price to call. Isn't that bad? Well, I mean, look. When he calls, he's still giving us value. We're still ahead of his hand. Um, and if we check back, I mean, we're giving him an infinitely great price to call because he doesn't have to pay anything to call. So, so even though he has the correct price to call, that's fine. And in fact, it's almost a nice thing that he has the correct price to call because it's more likely he'll actually will call as opposed to raising us, which is what we really don't want. What we don't want in this spot is to get raised by a flush draw or straight draw because it raises us off our equity because we can't call with ace high in this spot. You know, unless we have some, you know, incredibly solid reads that he's only raising draws here, which is super unlikely that we would be able to have that read. So all that being said, I would be betting here within value. I think that the sizing 50, 60 is great, and just checking back this river and expecting to be ahead here most of the time. Great, and we got, you know, it happened to be that he didn't have a weak showdown rally. He didn't have a draw. He had king high. And again, we got value out of it, and that's the important thing. And he didn't turn it into a bluff or anything else. You know, and I think that's one of the nice things about sort of betting small in those kind of turns is a lot of villains just, you know, they're not programmed to bet, to check raise bluff turns. Like, and programmed, I mean, it's not a population tendency to check raise bluff turns. You know, fish tend to check raise the nuts on the turn. And so if you give him an excuse, you know, even more reason to not check raise bluff, it's perfect. Yeah, this shove is absolutely fine. Obviously we get cooler pre-flop, but we bad beat him. So that's kind of cool. You know, and when you're in those kind of spots, I think it can be nice to even just think of that kind of spot as a flip. I remember it was in a skates video I watched where he says that that's a nice mentality to have when you're in one of those spots with, you know, ace four versus ace queen and you're really short stacked. I mean, it's a flip because you both would have gotten it in either way, and it's a flip of who had the ace queen versus the ace three, and then it's a flip of who, you know, actually wins the hand. So while it does impact your, you know, your all-in EV or whatever, it's a flip, and you know, we ran bad by getting it in versus ace queen, but then we ran good by getting it in by winning. This is kind of cool hand. Sorry, I'll rewind since I was talking about flipping rather than paying attention to the hand. So let's see again what's going on here. Overall, the hand looked fine. Yeah, we're definitely betting this turn. I think this is a little small sizing to use. I'm not quite sure what our student was intending by betting small. I guess his idea is that it's sort of a wet board, so villain will likely sort of either have something and call or not have something and fold. And I think that's fine. You know, obviously villain isn't going to fold any draws at this point anyways. It's just a little bit of a question of what villain does with the top of his like sort of bluff catchy range, like ace high and king high. And, we beat king high, so inducing it to call isn't such a bad thing. And ace high probably isn't folding to any size bet to one street. It's worth the betting. So, you know, all in all, it's a little bit of a weird sizing to use overall, and that's kind of a wet board. But given that it's such a wet board, and it's the kind of board where villain sort of either has something or doesn't, and isn't going to be sensitive to sizing, it makes sense to bet sort of small with a bluff type hand, but one that has some equity and has some turn value. So I think this is fine. We get called, and the turn is sort of a bad card for us. Like, I mean, we should expect villain to be c-betting most of his flush draws. That's the one thing that makes it good. But at the same time, I mean, fish don't always do that, and fish don't always c-bet all their straight draws either. So I think I would just check fold here. We've got king high. I don't see too much value bluffing here. Like, what do we bluff off? Like, I mean, I guess some 8x folds here. And a decent part of I mean, some of villain's range is 8x here. But, I mean, 6x is never folding here. Obviously, no straights or flushes are folding here. And I do picture still a decent amount of hands that got there on this river. So I don't see a purpose in betting here. And I also don't think that villain will ever bluff us on the river either. Like, So I think we can just check, and some of the time we'll even win versus some random hands. I don't know. I just don't think we get enough folds. We need like to fold out like 33% of villain's range there to be correct. So and obviously we're never getting value in that spot. So I don't like that river bet. This is fine. We're certainly c-betting this board. This is a spot I would c-bet smaller, and board's super, super dry. We expect to get a shit ton of folds anyways. Yeah, so I like the 30. There's no reason to bet bigger. Yeah, it's really weird when he min check raises us. But we fold. We've got nothing. If we had some tiny amount of equity, we can obviously flat. If we had like a gut shot or something, then we just get direct odds to call, essentially, when we throw in implied odds. So we don't get direct odds, we get odds. Looks good. Raise, solid. I'm 3-betting here. This is just a really good hand to 3-bet. I mean, flatting, it's going to have really marginal expectation. But it tends to play fine in a 3-bet pot, because sometimes you'll hit a flush draw and be able to get it in, which is nice. Not have to check fold or whatever. So, or bet fold. So I do like the 3-bet. And our stacks it's a good spot for this 100. I like the sizing. We are playing against a fish, so we should try to use sizings that are effective. And so, betting a little bit bigger, betting 100 rather than 90 will get more folds. I mean, it's true. Fish do tend to respond to bigger sizes by folding more. And we do want more folds with 10-4 suited. So I do like this. And, I expect him still to flat a decent percent of the time, but we're intending to c-bet, so it's fine. So I'm pretty happy with this. And throwing the fact that villain actually has been raising a lot makes it even better. But I would still be 3-betting that 10-4 suit, even if villain's raise number wasn't 100, if it was like 50 or 60. Just because it's a fish, or at least we assume it's a fish because it's random, and fish are going to play really bad post-flop. They're often going to be flatting us too wide pre, but then they'll make up for it by folding a ton of flops and turns. So I really like the 3-bet with 10-4 suited there. Even though we're readless against a fish, and I know a lot of people don't like doing that, but get over it. It's profitable. Nice. Yeah, I'm folding there. It sucks to have to fold to the 80, but I mean, often villain has such a nutted range. And I mean, Queen 7 also plays terribly. Like, if we had something that could maybe hit a flop for some implied odds, then sure, we can flat, but certainly not planning to the Queen 7 off. 4-5 suited, looks good. And raised. Yeah, 10-4 off, we're not 3-betting. Yeah, min raising 9-6 is still fine. It's an interesting board. This is actually not a bad board to check behind if we were playing against someone who check raises a lot. Because it's not the kind of board where we're really super happy to get it in when he check raises. Because his range is going to be comprised of 7x, some 2-pair hands, some better 6x, and draws, which we don't have that great equity. Like, we don't have super, super good equity versus a random 8 even. So all that thrown together, we're not super happy getting check raised here. We have check raise fold, even though we have a decent amount of equity, because we have, if we do hit an 8, we have a 9 to draw. So actually we do have pretty good equity versus 8s. So, I mean, all that being said, if you're playing against someone who does check raise a lot, I mean, c-bet getting it in here isn't going to be the worst thing ever either. But this is a hand that, will hit some disguised hands at the turn, so I mean, checking this board back is fine, but given that we're playing against a random player, fish, we should not expect him to be check raising wide, so we should be c-betting here for value. So I like this. The turns, it's not our favorite because we actually get a lot of folds here, but I mean, getting folds here is not such a bad thing. I would still bet this turn for value. It's a little thin. Like, there aren't that many hands we're getting value from. Like, we're getting some value from 8x, obviously, and 4x. But we are still getting some value out of 5x. I think a 5x maybe still calls sometimes. Probably not very often. The ace really scares a 5x. But if we bet small enough, I think we can get 5x to call. And if we can get 5x to call, then we have a lot of value in the spot. So I would probably bet even really small here, like 60 maybe, or 70, like really small, just to try to get value out of 5x. I think even 90 is too big because we just fold out too much of villain's range. So I would probably bet like 60 or 70. And as played, I think I'm just checking back the river. I think betting here is too thin. Like, I don't expect very much 5x to be left in his range, and if it is in his range, I don't expect it to call. Betting 3 streets on this kind of board, I mean, 5x just isn't calling the river. And versus other 6x, we're likely losing versus most of his 6x. There aren't that many 6x hands that we beat. So all, that's left is better 6x, 7x. That calls us, and obviously some random ace-x. So we should just check back and, beat all his draws at this point. Well played. On the river, yeah. Yeah, shoving 6s for sure. Oh well. Yep. Pretty standard. Yeah, I'm finding king 5 here too. That's wide, but it's fine. We won't expect villain to be playing super well post, and king 5's not that bad of a hand. This lead on the turn is again interesting. It's interesting again the small sizing. Here I actually really kind of hate the small sizing because it is a spot that we do conceivably want to try to get some folds out of some weaker draws, some 5x, and some other king x hands. So I would probably bet bigger here, probably like 50. But this is a good board turn to lead. We do have a gut shot. We do have king high. And so we don't need that many folds here. And furthermore, when we do get flatted, there'll be a lot of rivers where we can, bet for value too. So I do like this bet. I do think we fold out some hands that have good equity versus us if we bet bigger. And we do get even value against some hands too, because we do get value from flush draws. Our king high does beat them. So I would be pretty happy betting here. Just a little bit bigger. And on the river, I'm bluffing here. I think that there's enough weak pairs here, 3x, 6x, that do fold. Obviously the 9's not our favorite card to bluff. We prefer a queen, jack, 10. But I think a 9's good enough. And I would bet big here, like 125, maybe even bigger, and expect to get more than enough folds. Especially since, another benefit to betting here as opposed to checking is that while we do have king high and we do beat his flush draws, it's not guaranteed that he won't bluff them. I think on average, villains don't bluff too much in this kind of spot, but there are a lot of misdraws here. So there's a lot of incentive for him to be bluffing when we check to him with a good amount of hands. So that is another incentive to betting here. Like, just because we fold out, flush draws, that's actually in some ways a benefit because otherwise we have to check fold to them. Because certainly we can't check call here. Like, we need really good reads to want to check call this river with king high. I just think that there's too many 7x, 2-pair type stuff that bets 2. And a random villain, we just can't put that many flush draws in his range. So yeah, I think that I would bet here and try to bluff stuff out. And I think we do have to bet bigger here. Like, we don't fold out enough when we bet that small. Unfortunately, he had 9-8. He's not folding no matter what. Yeah. Yep, shoving there as pre is standard and fine. And we get cooler by the seconds. Oh. Alright, we got a rematch. So far we can put, certainly a lot of passive tendencies in villain. He, especially on that board, like he checked back that flop and called the turn lead. I think overall, you know, we can definitely put a pretty big passive sign on our villain so far. I'm 3-betting this pre. Yeah, 100's fine, especially since that's the sizing we used before. We are 3-bet calling here. Our hand is too much equity versus basically any 4x range, 4-bet range to fold there. So yeah, it is a 3-bet call. But it plays well post, so it's nice to do that. Jack 6 is a grid I'd like this hand to bluff with. Because again, it's going to be pretty bad to flat it. But at the same time, I expect to have enough fold equity when you combine pre-flop, the flop and turn to want to 3-bet here. And it's nice to know that so far he's folded to all 3 of our 3-bets. So 3-betting is going to be a pretty attractive option. He has been raising a lot of buttons. So in this spot, I would probably 3-bet ship. Just because he is raising so many buttons, and 3-bet shoving 9-7 suited in this spot is going to be quite profitable. I mean, I think flatting here is fine too, but I think given the dynamics, I think this is a really good spot to shove. Because I think that while 3-bet not all in here would be kind of bad if we had something like 9-2 suited or something crappy, and then, you know, I might consider 3-bet bluffing in normal spots. Given that we've 3-bet so much, I actually think that villain might be wanting to 4-bet lighter in this kind of a spot. But when we shove, he can't 4-bet lighter, and he's still going to be folding a lot of hands. So I think 3-bet shoving here is really good. I do think at this point we have enough reads on his opening percentage to know that it's wide enough to make 3-bet shoving 9-7 suited pretty good. And I think just this is a really good spot to do so as well. But flatting is going to be really good too. It's really hard to compare the two. You know, the huge benefit to flatting is we do know he's pretty passive. A 9-7 suit is going to play pretty well versus a passive player. So I definitely don't hate the flat. I just think that it is a spot to think to yourself, wow, this is a pretty good spot to shove. And, you know, I think probably given that we are playing against such a fishy player who is so passive, you know, leaning towards flatting is probably fine. But if you were playing against someone who had c-bet more, that is a perfect spot to 3-bet shove, given his opening frequency so far and the dynamics. Right, so yeah, min-raise fold. He's been pretty nitty so far. Again, small sample, but good enough. Where I would just be at this point opening any 2 cards, especially with the fact that he's passive. That makes opening buttons even better because he's not going to be check raising us too much. This is kind of ugly. I would just fold here. I mean, again, we have a passive read on him. And this board, like, it does actually make some sense for him to be leading with a king or even a 7. So I don't really like raising here. If we had maybe a spade in our hand, it would make playing back here better. And then at that point, you know, raising here is pretty nice because it lets us get more fold equity on turns and gets some fold equity right now. So I don't mind a raise here, but I definitely would want more equity to be raising here, more than just ace high. I want something that plays better on the turn. And I still think that it's really, really close and probably not very good just because we do have passive reads so far over a small sample on this villain. So the likelihood that he's you know, leading here light is just lower because he's less likely to be betting light in general. So you can see him tanking, so he's got something there. But we kind of got away with it, so that's cool. Min-raise fold, yep. Yeah, I'm folding that too. We're too short stacked to be wanting 3-bet, and the dynamics aren't great either. Like, he's seen us 3-bet a lot, and this is a really, you know, being so short stacked up, we want the dynamics to be good for 3-bet bluffing. We don't want to have 3-bet bluff or 3-bet much in general before, because 4-bets are so good versus us if we're 3-betting air this short stacked. Yep, obviously min-raise calling here and get it in. Obviously, we don't like the fact that he 3-bet not all in here, as opposed to shoving, because it represents a stronger range, but ace-10 has value in that spot anyway, so it's okay. But yeah, I'm not too surprised to see jacks here. But we're still should not be folding. Okay, yeah, open folding 8-3 there is fine. I think that, min raising it isn't going to be bad either. It's going to be pretty close to break even, especially at, maybe at lower stakes. It's going to be even better probably to min raise it, because villains are going to be likely to be worse post flop. But I think open folding that is fine too, just because villains do tend to flat a lot and play a pretty wide range. I like even limping it, just because people tend to be so bad in limped pots that it can be profitable to limp even crappy hands, and min raising it isn't that great because people tend to play a pretty wide range out of position. But so all options are really close, so just take whatever you feel like doing. All right, so the hand coming up is really interesting. It's kind of a rare spot, but we just flop the world, and this is one of those spots where actually I went back and reviewed what I said about it, because I wasn't 100% convinced I was even right, or certainly wasn't very clear. So in this spot, there's a bunch of things to think about, and a lot of things should be going through your mind, like what are we doing when he c-bets? Are we check raising, or should we be flatting? And the things to think about are, well, first of all, our hand should play really well on turns, right? Obviously we hit so many different turns, rivers. Flatting here isn't terrible. And one reason to think that would be that, well, if we check raise here, villain's pretty much is getting it in with a queen, 2-pair, and some draws, and that's about it. Obviously we crush draws, but, how well are we doing versus queen X? Is this a spot where we really want to just check raise, fold out all his air, and just be getting it in versus queen X? Oftentimes with hands like this, I think flatting can be really good. If we didn't have a flush draw, for instance, I think that flatting can be fine. However, in this spot, since we have the flush draw, we have a pair of flush draw, outside, open and straight draw, just the world, it's actually surprising how much equity we have versus top pair. I think you might be surprised, but it's 65%. This is something I had to sort of check because I didn't know it offhand in the game. But versus top pair here, we have 65% equity. So that's a fist pump get it in. That's a let's induce top pair to shove over us so we can get it in. Versus top 2-pair, we're also ahead. We're ahead of queen jack here. Isn't that crazy? It's one of those rare spots in Hold'em where a draw is ahead of 2-pair. We have 55% equity versus 2-pair. We're pretty much only behind queen 10, jack 10, and a set of jacks, set of 10, set of queens. So, and we're really not even that far behind a set. We have actually 45% equity versus a set. So in this spot, I would say we should check raise for pure value. Our hand is just so strong that we want to check raise, we want to get it in, and we want to get value now. Because notice that while, our hand will hit a lot of turns and rivers, we probably don't get that much action on a lot of them. I think that a queen X likely shuts down on a lot of turns and rivers. Now that depends a little bit on what kind of villain you're playing. If we were playing against a very aggressive reg, I think this isn't a terrible spot to slow play, essentially slow play and flat. Given that most likely villain won't put very many draws in our range, because most draws check raise the flop, he'll basically be putting us on a fairly capped range, and obviously we don't have to fold on any turn, and we have a world of rivers and turns that we hit. A decent amount of which are disguised. Again, if he's not putting any flush draws in our range, then we can hit, then flushes are disguised. If he's not putting very many straight draws in his range, straights are disguised. Likely a 10x is somewhat disguised. Of all the hands, that's probably the least disguised, because it's a hand we can sort of credibly flat the flop with. Although likely we're not flatting turns, so by the river, a 10 is likely disguised. Even a 9 is somewhat disguised, because I don't think he'll put too much 8x in our range, but he will put king x. Maybe will be some king x in our range. But again, a lot of players check raise draws. Maybe not king high, maybe not just a naked king, but decent amount of draws check raise here. So, I think that if we have super solid reads that our villain barrels a lot, and is willing to barrel on a wet board. A lot of regs even don't barrel on this board. They probably don't even c-bet very much. They c-bet, they're getting it in usually. So, Overall, I mean, I think in 90% of situations, probably 95% of situations, we should just check raise here for value. I think, you know, maybe 5% of the time against some very tricky, very aggressive regs, I could see flatting here. But it's just a spot where we should be check raising for value. And the sizing, you know, at this point with the sizing, we just want to make sure that Queen X gets it in. So likely I would probably raise not all in here to give him room to ship over us. I mean, we could shove ourselves, but I'm a little bit worried that Queen X folds. And when we bet not all in, there's also a chance that Jack X will float us. A decent amount of Jack X. And we have, you know, again, excellent equity versus Jack X. So I think check raising not all in is great. I like the sizing 120. I think that's fine. I mean, again, we just have massive value. Betting less, I mean, I guess if we bet less, we induce a little bit more. But at the same time, I mean, when he does flat us, we want him to flat a pretty big bet. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with this. I think the sizing's fine here. Maybe I would go a little lower. I mean, we could even be fancying check raise here to like 99 or 90 or something to really try to induce. But I think that we want to be careful not to be too fancy because we don't want to lose value. Again, we have a massive value hand. As much as it doesn't look like one on the front, you know, it's a massive value hand. So obviously we're snapping off and we're fist pumping that he's got Queen 4 because we have so much equity versus Queen 4. We have 65%. So yeah, so it's just unfortunate that he gets there. Essentially, he drew out on us. So yeah, again, I thought that was a really cool hand. You know, probably won't make you too much money because it's such a rare spot, but I think it's kind of a fun one to actually work through and just be aware of some of the equities in that spot. All right, obviously that's standard. I like the little small c-bet on that kind of a dry board. Looks good. Yep, folding. Jack 7's way too thin to bet call. No, to flat the 3-bet. Yeah, I'm shoving it too. Again, like ace-8's near the top, and you know, and you can see it does happen that villain limp traps. But you know, at least we have 30% equity versus queen, so it's not the end of the world. And it just really is very rare that happens. And this is, you know, it is a spot to note it down that, you know, villain limp trapped 25 big blinds deep. Yeah. And that's a really good note to take. And I would still be happy to play him. And I still like the shove with ace-8. Yeah, I'm flatting queen 5 suited there too. Yeah, that's a bit too strong of a hand. You know, it plays very well on post flop, so flatting it's gonna be fine. Yeah, I'm actually I am a fan of this check raise. This is a pretty good spot to check raise because the board is pretty bad for most c-bet ranges. There are a good amount of weak value hands, like weak speculative hands, there's a good amount of gut shots on the board that fold, and so we're happy about that. But there aren't actually that many super strong value hands. Like a 6x here probably isn't calling our check raise. There's 10x calls a check raise, but we have decent value with our queen. Like we have some decent equity. Like we have some outs versus a 10. That's why I like check raising here the queen. Like we still have we have backdoor flush draw, backdoor straight draw possibility. So this is a really good hand to check raise. And it's quite a good board too. And there still are hands that we represent by check raising. Like villain does have to put us on decent percent of king x here. So I do like this check raise, and this is a really good board and a really good hand to pick. That being said, this is a really bad turn for us to continue on. The reason being is it hits a lot of that middle type stuff and a lot of 10x. Like it hits a decent amount, 2 pair 10-8, but it also hits his gut shots and a few other kind of hands. So, and it doesn't hit us at all too. Like there were a lot of turns that would have improved our equity, our flush draw, giving us a flush draw, giving us a straight draw, giving us a queen, pair of queens, but this one does nothing for us. So I think there aren't too many turns I'm giving up on in this kind of a spot after check raising this kind of a board, because there's a decent amount of just 10x in villain's range that we want to try to fold out. But, 10x isn't even too I don't think 10x even folds this turn that much either. So this is a turn I would give up. So I don't like that c-bet. I don't think we have enough, or the turn barrel. Don't think we have enough fold equity, given this turn card. But, once we do bet that turn, this is actually a good river to ship. For the most part, when the river pairs the board, it's a bad spot to ship. But in this spot, since the river paired the bottom pair, and there isn't much bottom pair left in villain's range because we check raised and barreled, this is actually a really good turn card for us because it's essentially a complete blank that maybe is actually a little bit scary. So I think when we ship here, we actually do fold out a 10x a decent percent of the time. And obviously we do fold out other draws. We do fold out ace high type stuff. There are some ace high draws that beat us, like ace jack, ace queen. So we do fold those out. So I would ship this turn river, but I wouldn't really be in this spot because I wouldn't have bet the turn in the first place. But yeah, as played, we're shipping the river, and that's nice. We got the fold. And that's not to say I wouldn't be betting a lot of turns. It's just that specific turn is not my favorite to bet. But yeah. Yeah, open shipping a6. Solid.